Well, hello, Bellevue Neighborhood Church, and all our friends and everyone who's watching online. Every one of you, you count. You are a part of this. Today, we are continuing in this series, Unstuck. And my prayer and my hope is that the last 3 weeks have been helpful for you, and that this week and the next week will be practically helpful for you as well. We are in a complex and confusing time of life. It's challenging. There's all these different things happening, and life has been hard on so many people. And so what we've been doing is centering ourselves on Jesus's words and what Jesus tells us to focus on. And in Mark chapter 12, he makes it super clear. And this is the passage of scripture that's been guiding this entire series. Mark chapter 12, verse 28. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, "Of all the commandments, which is the most important?" "The most important one," answered Jesus, "is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this. Love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these." Now, Jesus is making a really profound statement here. What he's saying is that the scriptures, that the Bible itself, everything written in here can be boiled down to two separate commands. Love God with every part of yourself and love others. And significantly, he's asked one question about one thing and he gives two answers. He simply says we can't separate these things. And that's been the idea through this series, is that we cannot separate our lives. We are whole and holistic, and everything that we do in each of these different areas affects us. And so we've talked about emotional health and mental health and spiritual health. And today we're going to talk about physical health. And next week we'll talk about relational health, because every single one of them contribute to who you are as a human being and how you serve and love God. Now today we're talking physical health. And I have to be honest, I have not heard a lot of messages in church about physical health. It kind of is one of those things that goes by the wayside. Maybe on one hand I can count every time I've heard exercise or just simple physical health mentioned in a church. And so today we're going to look at that as a church, because I think it's really important. It really matters. Our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, and our bodies contribute to our health just as much as any other area of life. So I've invited Dr. Nielsen, Dr. Leland Nielsen from Northwest University to come and to speak and to share his expertise. He's an exercise scientist and teaches that at Northwest University. He studies exercise and all these different things and teaches people. And so he's got some great expertise in the area. And I'm really excited to share this interview with you. So sit back, relax, grab another cup of coffee if you're at home, and let's hear the conversation between Dr. Nielsen and myself. So today we are continuing a conversation that we have been in the last few weeks about Jesus' words in the scriptures, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And today we get to focus on strength and physical health. And so today we have with us Dr. Leland Nielsen, who's from Northwest University, and we're going to have this conversation. I'm so glad that you could join us today. Thank you so much for coming. Just give us a little bit of your background, how you got into this field of study, what you currently do for a career.
Sure. Well, I originally was drawn to exercise science through this initial sort of fascination with the human body. I was just so impressed with how complex and how the cohesiveness and how everything is put together, and what you might say is God's design. Mm-hmm. And that kind of piqued my interest in the area. So I decided to pursue it in undergraduate and master's work over at Central Washington University. And while there, I was exposed to some teachers, professors of mine that, just really developed this appreciation for people in need, for lifelong learning, and they really had a tremendous impact on me. And I decided at that point that I wanted to be a teacher rather than, say, a practitioner in that sense. And so I followed the degree path to do so, and I've been teaching at the university level in the area of exercise science since 2010. And really what I'm trying to do is instill that same passion, that same curiosity in the students that I have.
Yeah. And so how do you see your faith informing this area of study? Because a lot of people, I think it seems that the physical body, it's hard to sometimes draw those conclusions or those parallels. So for you, how does your faith inform the study of exercise science and physical health?
Well, I think there are a few things. One, I have a greater appreciation for the way the body is put together when you view it through the lens as God's design, And really what that translates to is that when I see how a system comes together and generates a very specific function, and it's amazing to see that. My appreciation is really less for the body then and more towards Him, in the fact that He designed us. He's the great physiologist in that sense. So I develop an appreciation for the Lord through my appreciation for the human body. Another thing that's really common in exercise science is compassion for others. I feel like it's important in my field of teaching, but also in all of my students, no matter which career path they take within exercise science, and there are a number of choices that they have, the common thread there is a compassion for people. You must have it. And we see Christ's compassion for sinners as a great model for that. And at Northwest, a lot of our students are drawn on that compassion for others. And I see that our faith just makes them better students in that sense. I also see a lot of parallels between developing or maintaining physical health to say spiritual disciplines, like as I mentioned earlier, reading your Bible, for instance. There are a lot of the same discipline aspects to say an exercise plan and reading a Bible, and I may talk more about that as we go through, but sure. I have a hard time separating those. I see them as very similar in that sense.
Yeah, there's like spiritual disciplines, which is like a church focus, which fasting and prayer and silence and solitude. Yeah. But the discipline of exercise and those kinds of things as well. I have found the same thing. Yeah, it does make a difference. I think I've also seen this tendency towards kind of two extremes in our world. And obviously exercise science is kind of a new thing. I think in antiquity, there was not really probably that much because people worked in the fields and they exercised all day because they built stuff or whatever. I mean, there was some level of sports happening, right, in Athens and in Greece, but it's kind of new. And our world seems to be increasingly focusing on fitness and those kinds of things. And I think for me, I've seen it lead to one of two extremes. That is, we either as Christians can totally neglect it and say there's no value in it whatsoever because the body is just the body, it's physical. The scriptures talk a lot about the flesh in a negative way. So we neglect the body, or we worship the body and we are obsessed with fitness. And so how do those things play out? And is there kind of a more biblical middle ground?
Well, I feel there is. I think that when I view the body as a temple, I tend not to take it to the extreme from an exercise standpoint or a physical health standpoint, like some can, and that may not be wrong, but I guess related to that, a thought that comes to mind is, there's something that I think about a lot, is that when I am sort of devising this purpose of developing physical activity by exercising, by eating appropriately, I think of, why am I doing that? And some of it has to do with how I feel and my longevity, but really, if you look at it through the lens of the idea that if I am healthy, if I live a longer, more quality life, would I not be more capable of experiencing and sharing God's love if I take care of myself, if I take care of my health?
Yeah.
So to ignore it might rob you of that a little bit, might compromise you a little bit in the experience and the sharing of God's love. So it's not an extreme, meaning I don't worship my body, in that sense, but you must take care of it. I just feel like it's a shepherding act. I'm trying to live out God's will by taking care of my physical health so that I don't miss out on some opportunity or something that He would like me to experience or share. Yeah. And I think that's the way I sort of view it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think the word stewardship I've heard and kind of comes to mind as well, or stewarding our physical bodies. Yeah, and certainly you call out in 1 Corinthians, we talk about our bodies as temples. That's pretty significant. If you look in the Old Testament to how much attention to detail God had for the temple, it's pretty significant for sure. Are there any significant opportunities or significant challenges that you see in modern trends around this area?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'll start with the challenges. The challenges, there are really two that come to mind. I mean, one is obviously time. We have this ability to just fill everything and fill our schedule with so much. And unfortunately, that makes it very difficult to prioritize physical health, because oftentimes when you have too many things to accomplish in the course of a day, physical activity is going to be the one that gets kicked out. And you think about why that is. If I have a full day and I don't exercise today, I'm not going to feel that tomorrow. I'm not going to notice that tomorrow. It takes time to accumulate these feelings. But so it's easy to put it off. But if you have a deadline or something else that's very tangible, you might notice that tomorrow. So we're sort of tricked or lulled into this inactivity. So time is a really important one. Another one is probably patience, a lack of patience that we'll have. We like things to happen quickly, and we like them to happen in large magnitudes. We want to be able to exercise and see immediate benefits, changes in body, changes in the way we feel, and unfortunately, it just doesn't happen that way. We need to remain consistent and persistent in the same way that we would, developing any sort of spiritual discipline. So I think it's obvious to people that those are the challenges, but you have to recognize them up front in the same way that, if you have a weakness towards a specific sin, if you are not purposeful in addressing that in your life, you're going to walk into it, and it's the same thing with time and patience. If you recognize, from the onset that those are going to be issues, and how do I address that, and how do I overcome those, then I think that you can address those challenges effectively. As far as opportunities, there are a number of ways I can go with opportunities, because there are a lot of opportunities. But one that has really been on my mind lately is the idea that when we use the example of exercise regularly, the benefits just go beyond just what we would call physical health. I mean, there are social health aspects, there are mental health aspects that you really can't separate. When we exercise regularly and enhance our physical health, we improve cognitive function, we sleep better, we're more patient with people around us. I mean, it's unbelievable how an improvement in physical health through doing certain things like exercise and eating appropriately can impact sort of almost every other aspect of your life. And that's really an opportunity that I think people don't see or feel sometimes or recognize sometimes. But it's really important to do that. It's added benefit that will help maybe motivate someone or allow someone to continue or really develop an impetus to become physically healthy if you recognize all the added benefits outside of just the body.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's been kind of the heart of this series, is to say these things aren't siloed.
Yeah.
Really, like they really all do affect each other in so many ways. I know I found when I had young kids, they had so much more energy than me. And so I actually, that motivated me to start to exercise a little bit more, because I'm like, I got to keep up with these guys. What in the world? And so that affected my relational health with my kids. And I mean, similarly, now we can go and hike together. And if I was in more of a physically challenged state, that'd be really difficult. So if somebody came to you and said they're feeling really stuck in physical health or in exercise, they say, like a lot of people, they joined a gym and next year they hope to go to the gym.
Sure.
And so how would you coach that person or help that person? I feel stuck physically in my health. What can I do?
Yeah, I think for me the first thing I would do is really try to figure out the purpose or the drive to become healthier. What is your reason? What is your why? And I think if you have a clear understanding of that, it does help drive all of the other decisions and can kind of provide some motivation and accountability in some cases. So that's the first thing you would do. And I hear that a lot with that applies for everything. Budgeting, what is your why, and saving and things like that. And it provides motivation in that sense and direction. So really think about, and I like your example of wanting to become healthier, become stronger, so that you have more energy and your family time is of better quality. And that's a legitimate why. That's a legitimate purpose, and that serves to drive all of your decisions that you make there. And there's something there, whether it's longevity, whether it's honoring your family, or just trying to feel better every day, which then frees you up to do other things and enjoy other things. You kind of have to figure out why would you want to get healthier, and try to hone in on what that is. Another thing I think that people may forget is that it really can be fun. You really want to try to do something that you enjoy. So if you are out there pounding the pavement running because you feel like that's what you should be doing and you really don't like it, then there probably is something else that you should try in that sense. If you don't enjoy it, it might not last in that sense. So I think having activity, whether it's hiking, especially in this area with the resources that we have available to us, you want to try to find something that you like, that you can do with your family, whatever the scenario is, that adds some enjoyment to it. I think that's really important. The third piece of advice I would probably get, and this is speaking from my own experience, is really that I need to prioritize. I need to schedule it in. It goes back to that challenge of time. So I plan out my entire week, if I can. This day I'm doing this. This day I'm doing this. This day I have a lot of meetings. I don't think I'm going to be able to fit. So this is going to be a rest day. You hear that a lot, to put it in the schedule as if it's a meeting. It's a meeting with yourself to do it. And I think that if you can figure out a way to incorporate it into your lifestyle, have it be something that is not such a strain to schedule. It's something that is just now something you do, like when you shower and you brush your teeth and you get dressed and you exercise. And the closer you can get to incorporating that into your lifestyle by making it part of your routine and scheduling it, the easier it's going to get, and the more likely you are to actually do it. It's providing a little bit of accountability there. Yeah. So those are some things. Figuring out your why, trying to find something you enjoy, and make it part of your routine. Yeah, those are important.
That's great advice. I think that's super helpful. So the scriptures talk a bit about Sabbath. It's one of the 10 commandments is to honor the Sabbath. often joked with people that it's actually the one of the 10 commandments that we brag about breaking, that we say, oh, this week I worked so hard, I never took a day off.
Yeah.
We brag about those. We don't really brag about like, oh, I slept with my neighbor's wife. That's another one that's in there.
Sure.
But we brag about breaking the Sabbath. So how does rest play into overall health and fitness and exercise?
Well, that's a really good question, and something that is probably undervalued. There's not enough attention to rest, and what the rest period does for us, whether it's on Sunday, at the end of a long week, or rest within an exercise program, it does allow our body and our mind really to recover from the work that we've experienced, that we've undergone. It allows for adaptations for growth to occur, and you could flip that around and say, if you don't provide rest, if you don't let your body and your mind recover and adapt, then it won't happen. That growth won't occur, and fatigue will continue to accumulate, and the quality of your work that you're trying to recover from will continue to go down. So recovery in that sense is really, really critical to allow your body and your mind to adapt to the work that you've just gone through, and to allow the work that you're about to go through the next week or in the future to be of high quality and to continue to build on it. So in that sense, I think recovery is really important.
Yeah. There was a friend of mine who helped me understand this. He's a bodybuilder, and he had talked about building your chest, right? All these guys want to get a bigger chest. And he said he see people just every day. They lift weights. They bench press, but they never took rest. Sure. And so their chest actually never got any bigger. And he told me the key component is rest. He said you break it down, you rest, allow it to build back up, and then you kind of keep doing that. So that actually helped me understand a little bit more about the overarching biblical kind of rest. What does that do? I've worked hard all week. Now I'm resting, and then I'm getting better for it. Even
that's a great analogy. I think that's a really good one. And from an exercise science standpoint, your analogy that you bring up is great, because if you in the instance of your friend, if they do not provide that rest, what will happen is that muscle group will actually become weaker. It will break down, and the use of that particular muscle group will be worse. We will become weaker in that sense, and of course the goal of that individual would probably be to become stronger. Yeah. So we're undermining the work that we put in by not providing that rest, and I think that's a great example that you bring up.
That is an excellent takeaway. I love that. Actually, I'm just going to pause on that. That's really good. Yeah, that's excellent. So are there any misconceptions around exercise science or physical health that you would like to clear up for us, or any misunderstandings that we may have that you see?
There's a little bit of a misconception that we just deal with say personal training, which isn't the case. 20 years ago, it was a little more like that. The misconception, I would say, with physical activity and physical health is something that I did bring up a little bit earlier, is that it just takes time. The example that you brought up with someone joining a gym and not being able to stick with it, it just everything that we do will yield a benefit, but it's always slower than we want it, and that's the misconception associated with exercise, I think, because I think someone will adopt a program for a very short time, maybe a month, maybe even 2, which sounds like a lot, and they're putting in the time and they're putting in the work, and they're feeling great in that sense, but they're expecting more. They're expecting huge jumps in fitness and health and vigor and whatever it is they're looking for, and it just doesn't move as quickly as we'd like. So that's one of the misconceptions regarding physical activity, is that you're really rewarded for persistence, and I think that's a lesson that can be learned, that you can apply to all areas of your life. I think the Bible will support that in that sense. And physical activity is no different in that way. Persistence is really important because it just has to take a long time to grow, develop.
So you just got to stick with it.
Yes.
Any tips? I mean, we talked about having the reason why, which is probably a huge motivator to understand why I'm doing this, and probably to center it on the correct why. I think maybe your appearance being the hottest guy or the hottest girl in the world may not be a great why. But anchoring those to like more important reasons why may help.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that really I think help us maintain this persistence, this consistency is by potentially adding a social aspect, if you can. I mean, I know it's very difficult. It's more difficult than it was before the coronavirus was around. But I've noticed that in individuals that can add a social aspect to their exercise, to their physical activity plan, they just seem to be a lot more successful in maintaining that long-term, that lifestyle aspect. And that could be, exercising with someone. That could be just sharing your experiences, your struggles, your successes on social media. People do that a lot. And I think what it does is it provides a level of accountability and encouragement by adding that social aspect that a lot of people have a really difficult time generating on their own. Some people can, and that's a blessing. But some people really need that external encouragement, that external accountability from others. And I've seen that people who do that well and people who can use it positively really do a good job of maintaining their plan, their purpose, their desire, their consistency, and from a long-term standpoint. So if there's a behavior that you might want to incorporate into your physical activity that might ensure that you stick with it, it might be that, including others. In that sense.
That's great.
And that's I found to be really important.
Yeah. Can we talk nutrition? Is that part of your understanding? Okay, cool.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know if you see this. I've always heard eat to lose and exercise to gain. Like if you want to lose weight, it's all about what you eat, just because the simple facts of like to eat 100 calories is incredibly easy, but to burn 100 calories is that's like running a mile, basically. So I've always heard that kind of context. If I'm trying to lose weight, you really got to focus on what you're consuming. But if you want to make fitness gains, you really have to use focus. And so kind of the marriage of the two is overall good.
No, I think your point there is well taken. The recommendation is always to utilize both nutrition or diet, if you will, and exercise in combination, because they each have their own benefits. I think the way you put it is very wise in that sense. And people that try to lose weight by exercise alone and not paying attention to the nutritional aspect, I found to be not as successful. And I think it's for that reason. It's very, very difficult to accumulate a caloric deficit through exercise alone if you don't have nutrition sort of playing its part. So I think that's very, very wise in that sense. And yes, if you just focus on the nutritional aspect and neglect the exercise, it doesn't mean you can't be healthy. But you're right. The strength aspect is probably going to be compromised a little bit. Your muscles can only grow and adapt to stimulus that you provide, and diet isn't going to do that. Exercise will do that. So ideally, you will pay attention to both ends of that spectrum, and the idea that sort of independent of what you're eating, just eating the right amount, and everybody's going to have opinions on, like you said, organic foods, types of foods, different proportions of nutrients, and those are all valid and can work in the right situation. But yeah, the idea that you would eat or consume the right amount is really important in the face of health. Yeah.
Maybe as a disclaimer, we can say, if you want to make a nutritional change, you should consult your doctor about that.
Definitely, yeah. See a registered dietitian.
Yeah, for sure.
See your physician.
Neither one of us
We
are
cannot,
able to provide that actual
I'm
level.
not qualified for that.
Yeah, for sure.
That's correct.
Can we talk on any level about like healing or disease, like how exercise or just overall physical health affects those? Do you have any understanding of that?
There's plenty of evidence that physical exercise, or if you flip it around, the lack of physical exercise increases your risk for developing certain diseases or health outcomes, like diabetes, like certain cancers, like anything that affects cognitive function, Alzheimer's, things like that. So there are epidemiology sources that show this strong connection between physical activity and this decrease in risk, or if you reverse it, physical activity increasing your risk in certain health outcomes. So yeah, I think that it's difficult to talk about it in the spectrum of one person, because genetics plays a really important role in that. So you might be more susceptible to develop heart disease or diabetes because of a genetic component, and exercise might play a role in how that genetic aspect is expressed. But overall, there's an overwhelming amount of evidence that suggests that physical activity over the course of a lifetime that's consistent will decrease your risk for developing, especially metabolic diseases, but a wide array of diseases and health outcomes, and that's well established.
Yeah, which to what we've talked about earlier goes to say you have more longevity, you can be who God created you to be, you can serve Him with vigor into old age and beyond.
I feel like, maybe 20, 30 years ago in the field of medicine and even in our field, we were very focused on longevity, making sure that people live as long as possible, but we weren't paying enough attention to the quality of life in those late years. And that's really where we're making just tremendous advances in the understanding of how things like resistance training and anaerobic training can not only extend your life, but enhance the quality of life that you're experiencing, and that's going to be really, really important to.
Yeah. As we wrap up this conversation, do you have any final takeaways or anything that we haven't gotten to talk about that was on your mind?
A lot of the same things that I see in individuals that are able to develop and maintain their physical health, we see in something like reading the Bible. If I recognize the importance of reading the Bible in me having a better understanding of God's will for me, in me having a better understanding of who He is and who I am in Him, and a better understanding of how He wants me to treat others, something as simple as that, right? I understand that reading the Bible is important in that sense. Well, we do the same thing with physical activity or physical health. Why is it important to us? Then it goes to doing it. So if I read the Bible whenever I feel like I have time, maybe once on the weekend, maybe once on a Tuesday afternoon because I found a little spot, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to sink in. I'm not going to gain a level of understanding that the Lord would have me gain in that time. I'm not paying the appropriate respect to that process. And it's the same with physical activity. If you don't have a plan to exercise or a dietary plan, if you will, it's not just going to come together, and you're really defeating the first point, which is the importance. Why is it important in that sense? And there's a parallel in that. So in the same way that I set aside a time where I can be still and I can be in the presence of God reading His Word, And I do that and I schedule it, and it's a part of my routine, it's a part of my lifestyle, and that's how I'm able to grow effectively through that process. It's the same thing with exercise. We have to set aside a time where we can be in that activity, and we understand why it's important, and that's how we develop and grow in say, a physical manner. So I just want to point out that parallel that somebody in your congregation might be able to understand it from say, a reading standpoint.
Yeah.
And I apply the same principles to exercise.
Yeah.
And if you think of it from that way, you might have someone that can sort of relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Or in your world as a professor, if your students don't study and don't read the stuff, they're not going to pass the class. They're not going to learn the material. It just takes that persistence over time, right? So we kind of talked about having a clear why are you doing this, and then actually choosing something you like to do, which I found really helpful. I'm not the runner guy. Like I've tried that because it looks really cool, and but I just don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so I do other things, and then having that communal aspect seems to help as well. If there are people, they're looking for more resources maybe in this, do you have any places you could point us to go a little bit deeper, or any helpful tips?
Yeah. Well, I of course as a professor, I always kind of go to the literature a little bit. We have a couple of organizations. We have the American College of Sports Medicine and the National Strength and Conditioning Association, which even for the lay public they have a lot of these papers that they have published called position stands or position statements, which basically synthesize a ton of research in a particular area, like exercise impacting type 2 diabetes, for instance. And they break it down and they synthesize it in a way that anybody can read them. And they're really, really helpful. So if you are interested in learning more about a specific type of exercise and its impact on various aspects of health, whether it's sleep or mental health or cognitive function or whatever it is, there are position statements on that particular topic in which someone can become really well informed. And those are free, they're easy to find. Those organizations, the purpose of those organizations are to do just that, synthesize complex research to the public so that the public can now consume it and use it to improve their quality of life. So those are the resources I tend to go to just because they're ones that really serve our students really well, and we want them to get familiar with that information, and the purpose there is really to allow the public to digest that material. So cool. I'd probably say use those organizations. It's all free. So
okay, cool. Are there any other like keystone behaviors, as in a behavior that affects everything else? Like you do kind of just add this one thing, and I know we're always looking for a silver bullet and there may not be one.
Sure.
But like if you do this thing, I've heard, and maybe you can support this, I've heard that like food journaling, for instance, is like a keystone behavior. All of a sudden you just start paying attention to what you're eating and it changes. Is there anything like that, or am I accurate?
I think that the answer is probably going to be different for each person. I think your example of food tracking is really on point because what is pretty common in the let's say the exercise industry right now is using technology or activity tracking. And I say that with the caveat that, for instance, I'm a runner, so when I run, my run uploads to a social media platform, and I'm able to break down the data. I'm kind of a numbers geek in that sense. I'm able to break down the data, look at where my heart rate zones were at various times, and that is motivating to me. I love that. I love that it's going to give me stats for every week and every month and every year, and I compare it to the previous month and the previous year. And that is very motivating to me. It might not do anything for someone else in that sense. So tracking is really important. We see that a lot with resistance training and lifting weights. Individuals that keep track of their particular weight that they lift for a given task over time, and you see that the development of strength in that area, and that's very motivating. So it could be tracking. It could be it could be just the idea of planning it out ahead of time. If time is a barrier for you, making sure you put it in your calendar for that week ahead of time, and that's the only way you're going to do it. We'll hear people say that If I don't have it in my calendar, it's not going to happen. So yeah, I mean, that's another aspect of sort of personal exploration, is trying to find what that behavior is, what that reward is, what is it that continues to motivate you to incorporate it into your lifestyle. But yeah, everybody's going to be a little bit different, but everybody's going to have that thing. Yeah, and that's kind of the fun, and some of it is trying to figure out what that is.
Yeah, it sounds like the common thread through all of them is some level of preparation. You've got to set up the fitness tracking. You've got to set up your food tracking, or you've got to prepare yourself with a plan of some kind. Yeah. So we're preparing, and maybe that's the common thread. But everyone, for sure, different. But everyone can and should do something, right? I think we both can agree on that. Yeah,
absolutely. And another thing that you'll see is that people might try to improve their physical health, and it won't go great at the beginning. And they'll stop, or they'll miss a day. And what's important is that you recognize that that's just a hiccup, and to get right back in and try. And everything that you do is going to provide some benefit, in some way, and to maintain persistence in that sense. And we see a parallel there with sin. If we're struggling with a sin and we give into that sin, and we know we shouldn't, it shouldn't derail us. We should be right back to it with our eyes on God. Yeah. And it's the same thing with exercise. If we miss a day, or if we have a vacation and we miss a week, don't let it derail you. Get right back to it. Get your eyes on the purpose and plan. And I think that's going to be helpful in that sense. Yeah.
I think that is a great word to end on. So thank you so much for coming and having this conversation with us. I'm praying and believing it'll be really helpful, practical for people as well. And so thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are honored that you came and spent some time with us.
It's my pleasure. It's been great. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Nielsen. Man, I found that to be a really helpful, really practical conversation about something that we just don't talk about that often in church, which is physical health. And my prayer and hope is that something stuck with you from that conversation, that there is something you can take away and grow in. Now, it's not to make us feel guilty. It's to help us grow. It's to help us advance and become who God has created us to be. And there's just a real clear reality. We are holistic beings, and part of that is our bodies. We are not separated. We are not spirit and then body and two separate different things. We are holistically integrated. And what we do with our bodies, it really, really matters. So I want to walk us through this process that we have walked through the last 3 weeks to grow in this area and to challenge us in this area this week. So the first question we're going to ask is this: what is your definition of a healthy person? And what you'll need to do is grab something to write with, or think about this, write down on your phone, text yourself, whatever it might be. But just jot down a couple of ideas. For instance, a healthy person physically exercises regularly. They eat a low-fat diet. They sleep 8 hours a night. That'd be amazing, right? And all these different things. And so write down your ideas. And then the second question is this: how do you measure up to your own definition of physical health? Don't import somebody else's definition, just simply what you wrote down. How do you measure up? So again, like I mentioned, sleep. And I have young kids, so sometimes 8 hours of sleep isn't all that realistic. You gotta wake up in the middle of the night, take care of stuff. It's just the way it is having young kids. And so maybe that one's fallen short, and maybe I need to make some adjustments in that area. So measure yourself against yourself and what your own definition of health is. And then we're gonna do this third thing. The third question is this: what is one thing you can do this week to grow? What is one thing, not 2 or 3, one thing you will do this week to grow in your physical health? Maybe it's to start exercise program. Maybe it's to start counting calories. Maybe it's to get 8 hours of sleep. Whatever it might be, do something that will help you grow. And just choose one thing and make it achievable, make it realistic. You're not going to run a marathon this week. That's okay. But you could start running this week, and that would be amazing. So, except for, who likes running? I don't know. You crazy people like running. But do something. Just choose one thing and make it achievable. And I want to pray for us, church. We're going to worship together. We're going to continue on with this time of gathering. So, Jesus, we love you. We thank you that you created us powerfully and amazingly. God, our bodies are amazing works of engineering, an amazing feat of creation. They are powerful, and we are still studying and learning and understanding how they work at all. So God, thank you that you created us body, soul, spirit, mind, all integrated, all together. And I pray that we would use this opportunity to grow in our physical health, that as a church we would grow in physical health, God, that we would become the people that you've called us to be in so many ways, Jesus. And I as well, in this conversation, pray for healing. God, I ask that you would heal people who are sick, heal people whose bodies are not working and functioning the way that you designed them to. And God, I pray that Jesus, that you would tangibly reach down, miraculously heal people in Jesus' name, because I believe you can and you want to. So Jesus, we thank you for healing. We thank you for creation. We thank you for everything that you're doing. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.